Hi guys, Tom Barton from TomBartonSports.com here. Guys, we're talking quarterbacks today, and two very, very close quarterbacks I want to get into. They actually happen to be in the same division. Check me out at TomBartonSports.com. Tom Barton Sports over on Twitter. If you want to write me, it's TomBartonSports@gmail.com. All right, guys, let's get into it. Look, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes. Now, I wanted to have a conversation about this debate from a fantasy aspect, and I said, overall, from a football aspect, it is really a good debate anyway. If we all kind of just come to the conclusion that in a fantasy aspect for sure, Josh Allen is the number one. I'm in a 2-quarterback league, and I had the number 3 pick. All summer long, I knew I had the number 3 pick. I was saying, okay, I'm going to have to choose between Mahomes and Justin Herbert. And Patrick Mahomes against Justin Herbert, right on the surface, is splitting hairs. But I don't even know if you guys realize as close as this is. It is absolutely a coin flip situation. And I'm not just talking about fantasy. I'm talking about overall production. I'm talking about overall success. There's a lot to be said that the Chargers and Chiefs are the number 1 and 2 teams, even in a division with Russell Wilson, newly paid Russell Wilson, and the Raiders who made the playoffs last year. It's Herbert. It's Mahomes. Talk to a bunch of Chiefs fans, talk to a bunch of Chargers fans. They're going to tell you their guy is assuredly the better player. Oh, absolutely. And everybody's kind of got their favorite. Is it going to be Mahomes with the consistency? Is it going to be Herbert with the bright future? And then after you hear the argument about how good they are, you hear things like MVP and you hear things like Super Bowl. I can't remember a time in recent memory where two players were so statistically very close, their teams were so close, and their teams had such big expectations along with themselves having big expectations on a personal level. So I wanted to dive into both of these. Look, let's go to Justin Herbert. And Justin Herbert, at this point, he's got a young career. You look at what Justin Herbert has already done, and the sky's the limit. But I will say this, look, his team didn't make the playoffs last year. Now, Justin Herbert in year number 2, he had the third most air yards, 5,275. He had the most passing touchdowns at 38. His red zone carries were 23. Okay, so he's not somebody that is going to run the ball a lot, but those really do show you there is even a little bit more room for improvement. Los Angeles has the 5th highest rate in the league at passing, so they're going to throw it all day. Mike Williams, Austin Eckler, add a Joshua Palmer. Of course, Keenan Allen is his main attribute. You go to a Gerald Everett, maybe Parham, add something, maybe Isaiah Spiller. You have a number of weapons. This team understands what they are, and they love to throw the ball all day long. Now, the Chargers' schedule is going to get a little bit tough, especially late in a fantasy realm. You look at this late schedule, but overall, they're still going to throw the ball, and they play in a nice environment. It's not like you have to worry about the weather in Denver, or you have to worry about being outside in the cold in Chicago or Green Bay. So they're playing in a nice environment, even if it's not in a dome, although their schedule from a fantasy perspective gets a little dicey at the end. And maybe that's the difference between Mahomes and Herbert. How about Patrick Mahomes? Look, the consistency is there. And all of a sudden, I think that the Patrick Mahomes bandwagon was up here, and now the overcorrection is there. I think Patrick Mahomes is getting slighted a little bit. I think Patrick Mahomes has people in the media coming out and saying, well, maybe he's not a top 5 guy. Yes, somebody did say that on one of the national networks. He's not a top 5 quarterback. I've heard people say, you know what, his best days are behind him. Look, he did lose Tyreek Hill. And I've spoken to people on my radio shows, I've spoken to people outside of that have told me, so what? It's a wide receiver. You can replace him. As good as he is, they can replace him. I've also heard the idea that, look, Tyreek Hill was a unique talent, and the way that he opened up the middle was just something that Patrick Mahomes needs. We also know that they brought in new players. They also lost, by the way, to Marcus Robinson and Byron Pringle. But they brought in Juju, who has a lot to prove, and he's got a lot of talent. They brought in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I like that move. They brought in Sky Moore, who can be that kind of unique kind of Tyreek situation. And I know that Travis Kelce is going to be 33 during the season. I understand that. But Travis Kelce is still that dynamic tight end that he has. You still have Andy Reid, and you still have Patrick Mahomes, right? I mean, we understand what Patrick Mahomes is going to be. He's going to constantly be just a dynamic player. Now, he did have a problem last year on cover 2. You don't think that him and Andy Reid sat down and they're going to fix that over the offseason? I guarantee they will. One of the things that I say about Patrick Mahomes as well, as nice of a guy he is, and we all like him in the commercials. Now he's a Fortnite character, right? We like Patrick Mahomes a lot, but there's always that edge, and it's not rarely seen. Last year, when he wasn't the number one player, and he wasn't the number one player in the NFL's top 100, he came to Twitter and he had a little guy with a little notepad, right? Taking it down. I think Patrick Mahomes has a lot to prove. I think he's heard all offseason just how much better Justin Herbert is. I think he's heard all offseason how Josh Allen is clearly the best quarterback in the NFL. I think he's heard all offseason how he didn't make Tyreek, but Tyreek made him. But let's look at how absolutely close these two players are. Completions last year, 443 to 436. You're talking about an entire season, 7 completion difference. Attempts last year, and I'm saying Justin Herbert first, Patrick Mahomes second. Attempts last year, 672 to 658. 14 attempts difference. 65.9% completion percentage for Justin Herbert, 66.3. We're splitting hairs, guys. 5,014 yards against 4,828 yards. I know going over the 5,000 yard mark is great. It's fantastic. It's less than 200 yards. Divide that up over a 17 game season. You're talking about 20 yards here or there, right? Not even. Yards per attempt, 7.5 to 7.3. Again, splitting hairs. 38 touchdowns for Herbert, 37 for Patrick Mahomes. 15 interceptions for Herbert, 13 for Patrick Mahomes. They are right there. Sacked 31 times for Justin Herbert, 28 for Patrick Mahomes. There's no discernible difference from their last year's moving forward. There's no discernible difference. What you're doing is you're speculating on these guys. Who's going to have a better year? Who's going to have a down year? Their numbers are so unbelievably, unrealistically close that you can't tell me you are believing that one guy had a better year than the next. It's this close. Then you add in the rushing yards, the attempts 63 to 66. 302 yards to 381 yards. Well, okay, 60-yard difference. Does that really matter? 4.8 to 5.8. I know Mahomes had more there. The longest, they both have over 30-yard. They 20, 2 and 5, 3 touchdowns for Herbert, 2 for Mahomes. You know, you look at what they did last year overall, and it's so unbelievably close, I'll keep saying it, that it's flipping a coin. Now, I will tell you, from a fantasy perspective, I was sitting with the number 3 pick in a 2-quarterback league, and I said, I think I have to lean Mahomes. Look, I love Justin Herbert. I really do. But here's my thought process on it. Justin Herbert's going to have a better team this year. His defense is going to be better. They got Mack. They have a healthy Derwin James. Of course, we know about Bosa. And I think that they're going to be a better team, which means they're not going to have to throw as much. They did bring in Spiller. I know they signed Sony Michel. They'll still throw, but they may not have to throw all that much. The Chiefs, I think that they're a little bit worse of a team. So from a fantasy perspective, that helps. I think Patrick Mahomes is going to have to do a little bit more without Travis Kelce, with just Travis Kelce, without Tyreek Hill. I think he's going to have to do a little bit more. I think he's going to have to push the ball a little bit more. I think his running numbers go from 380. He might reach 450, 500 yards. He goes from 2 touchdowns on the ground to 4 or 5 rushing, and he is the difference maker. At the number 3 spot in a fantasy draft with 2 quarterbacks, if you're sitting between Justin Herbert and Patrick Mahomes, I'm going Patrick Mahomes. I like the consistency. I like the stability. I like what Patrick Mahomes brings to the table. But you can't go wrong in either case. Now, outside of fantasy, if we're talking about MVP, I kind of like Justin Herbert. I think his team is going to impress people. People like new, and especially the voters are an MVP. They like to give it to somebody new. And Herbert's new. Herbert's ascending. Patrick Mahomes has already been there. And I think that Justin Herbert, with similar numbers to what he had last year, could very well win the MVP. I think that a lot of people wanted him to win it last year, but his team didn't even make the playoffs. This year, they will make the playoffs. If they happen to win the division, yeah, in real life, Justin Herbert will get the MVP votes, not Patrick Mahomes. Now, which teams are better? Well, now you're going down the avenue of the teams and the defenses. I personally think that the Chargers are going to be a tad better, but I'm not writing off Kansas City. If you told me that both of these guys are going to not only win the MVP, but they're going to go to the Super Bowl, win the Super Bowl, and win the Super Bowl MVP, I'm living in that world. I understand it can happen for both of them. So I think we're splitting hairs. It's flipping a coin. In a fantasy perspective, I'm taking Mahomes ever so slightly over Justin Herbert. In a real life world, I'm taking Justin Herbert ever so slightly over Patrick Mahomes. But I think we should both enjoy it. Look, I'm not a fan of either team, but I don't dislike either team. So for me, from an outsider's perspective, I'm sitting back and saying, this is just going to be a great battle of a 1-2 quarterback. Then you throw Josh Allen in the mix. The NFL is in really good hands for the next decade plus, just with these two players. And forget about the Joe Burrows of the world, the Trey Lances that's coming up, the Trevor Lawrence, and everybody else. Enjoy it from a fan's perspective. Enjoy it from a fantasy perspective. If the worst decision you have to make in fantasy this year is deciding between Mahomes and Herbert, hey, you're going to have a really good team. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. TomBartonSports.com. Please go check it out. Tom Barton Sports over on Twitter and Tom Barton Sports. Make sure that you like this. Make sure that you comment. I want to hear who you would take. Who would you take? Are you taking Herbert? Are you taking Mahomes? Did I get something wrong here where some guy has an advantage that I just missed in the stats? Let me know. Comment below. Share this and like this. Have a very good day, everybody.